Uh-oh. It looks like Critical Role are in trouble. So Critical Role have recently started a new show called Candela Obscura, and the internet is extremely mad. Which is funny because as the biggest actual play RPG troupe in the world, Critical Role used to be able to do no wrong. Matt Mercer was the Teflon Kid, and everything slid right off him. But things have changed. They've gotten a lot dicier. 2 weeks ago, I made a half-joking video about how Candela Obscura could possibly sideline my favorite horror RPG, Call of Cthulhu, for all time, in a video entitled The Big Problem with Critical Role's new game. But according to the internet, I was 100% wrong, because Critical Role have stolen the game mechanics of a totally different game system and are now selling it as their very own original work. Yeah, there are some pretty huge allegations being thrown at the Critical Role crew. And this isn't just blind hate. There is some substance to this claim. When I last covered Candela Obscura on the channel, all I had to go on was all the art and images and the setting of the game that had been revealed to us. But now, Critical Role have released the quick start rules, and the episodes of the actual play are out and can be watched. We can see the game in action, and we can finally get an idea of how it plays for real. And the internet is not impressed. Commenters have been scathing about what they are calling a theft. And I can kinda see why. Because I was there. I watched the inaugural first episode of Candela Obscura. I was sat in front of the monitor excited to see what Critical Role's new system would bring. I had my popcorn in one hand and soft-boiled egg in the other, eyes bulging with delight at the idea of being exposed to a system beyond the traditional Dungeons & Dragons D20 roll high and see if you succeed system. I was expecting something new, a novel from Candela Obscura and the Critical Role team. And instead what I got was a group of people dressed like the cast of a late Tim Burton movie playing a game that I had already played before. I'm not being cruel here. I'm not being outrageous when I say this. Seriously, don't believe me? Well, let me very quickly explain Candela Obscura's system and maybe you'll see. So, very simply, player characters are defined by a certain role and their stats are broken down into 3 main attributes: smart, strong, or mental. These attributes are further broken down into a number of subcategories that reflect the actions that a player character can take throughout the game. So, for example, the survey action allows a player to observe a situation and anticipate an outcome. These are your sub-attributes. Very simple. And these sub-attributes have a number of dots that can be assigned to them. The more smart, strong, or bloody mental you are, then the more dots that you have to assign in that attribute category to your sub-attributes. And for each dot you have in a sub-attribute, you get a D6 die added to your dice pool when you take the relevant and appropriate action. So, for example, if I want to do that survey action from before, maybe I'm trying to be a little bit of a peeping Tom, see something that I like, you know? Well, I've specialized in that, so I got 2 dots in the survey sub-attribute, and that means I'll roll 2d6. Now, when determining whether an action is a success or failure, I'm gonna look for the highest number that I rolled in my dice pool. And if the biggest number I can find is a 6, cha-ching, I got a success. Or if it's a 4 or 5, then it's just a partial success. And if it's a 1, 2, or 3, then buddy, we got a failure. And there's a little bit more to this. You can add dice to your dice pool by spending a special resource. But overall, that's basically it. That's the system. That's Candela Obscura. Oh, wait, hold on. Turns out I was reading from a completely different rulebook of a completely different game called Blades in the Dark this entire time. Easy mistake to make though, considering that the differences between the Candela Obscura system and the Blades in the Dark system are about as different as any 2 mobile phone city builder games. It doesn't matter how sexy the anime avatar is, it's all the same Skinner box, people. And the internet has caught wind of this and has not been kind to Critical Role. In fact, I would say that the internet has been very unkind, which is quite unusual for them. I've been seeing tons of conversations and scathing comments about Critical Role's theft. Candela Obscura has been referred to as Blades in the Dark with a coat of paint, slop for Critical Role fanboys, and my favorite, Diet Blades. So refreshing. And these statements have mostly been sandwiched between disparaging comments about critters. Seriously, ever since the Candela Obscura actual play started and we first got to see the system from Critical Role, criticism has been vitriolic, which is weird considering that 99.9% of content sold in the RPG market is literally just X setting in the 5th edition engine, and everybody seemed happy enough to just keep going along with that. But no, not this time. This time it's a big deal. I guess an element in this is that Candela Obscura is a new system from Critical Role, and that means it has a lot to live up to. People were expecting something revolutionary, transformative, and noteworthy. And it seems they've been disappointed in the actual product. It's kind of ironic. Matt Mercer is now experiencing the Matt Mercer effect. Haha! But it's not just a disappointment from role players. It's an anger too. There really are legitimate accusations flying at Critical Role and the designers of Candela Obscura that they stole the design of another lesser known, though relatively popular indie game. And there's a feeling of distaste in the community at watching Critical Role wearing the face of Blades in the Dark like a skin mask worn by Leatherface as he gesticulates madly around the room saying, look at me, I'm eating people's toes." Which leads me then to the uncomfortable question, the one we almost dare not ask. Did Critical Role steal Candela Obscura from Blades in the Dark and then like a bovine can only get off by balls? Well, the answer might surprise you, because it's no, you fucking lunatics. This entire discourse is maddening. And look, okay, I get it. Candela Obscura is extremely similar to Blades in the Dark. Incredibly similar. I really did explain the rules of both systems earlier in the same sentence, and I did refer to the exact same survey action that is present in both games. These RPG systems are as connected to each other as the Habsburgs. They share the same chin. There is indeed a dark truth to the accusation that Candela Obscura is basically Blades in the Dark, at least in terms of its mechanics. There are some changes, sure, some of which are well liked and others less so. For example, the trauma system in Blades of the Dark is replaced in Candela Obscura by scars, and resistances in Candela Obscura are a reroll rather than just negating consequences like how it works in Blades in the Dark. There are impactful changes here that do affect how the game is played, but you know, they're not major, right? Really, the biggest change between the two systems are mostly in theme and vibe. Blades in the Dark is a gothic fantasy setting all about playing a crew of daring rogues seeking their fortune in a Victorian-style industrial city, all the while contending with occult mysteries, dangerous monsters, and deadly combat. In contrast, Candela Obscura is a gothic fantasy setting all about playing a crew of daring rogues seeking their fortune in a Victorian-style industrial city, all the while contending with occult mysteries, dangerous monsters, and deadly combat. Wait. Okay, so I'm being a little facetious here. Blades is mostly about heists and criminal enterprise. Candela Obscura is mostly about solving horror mysteries. A random session of each game will probably play a lot differently. And each system does have their little tweaks here and there that are designed to reflect a different style of play. I think a lot of the criticism of Candela Obscura has emerged from this idea that there is something deceptive in its use of the Blades in the Dark D6 system. That Critical Role and Spencer Stark and Rowan Hall, the lead game designers, were trying to pull a fast one on the community by stealing game mechanics and passing it off as their own. And I can't see why this was raised, at least originally. Because the first version of the quick start rules of Candela Obscura that was provided to the public by Critical Role was just a half finished document. And importantly, it didn't provide an acknowledgement to John Harper, the creator of the Blades in the Dark system. But that has since changed. The most recent updated finished quick start version of the rules does include an acknowledgement of inspiration from both Blades in the Dark and Vaesen, another very similar game that uses a very similar engine. And if this acknowledgement didn't exist, if Critical Role didn't show their sources, then this video would be very different. It wouldn't have had a fun mid-video twist, and I would have been a lot more shouty and finger pointy, and probably all those beeps earlier would have been uncensored. But the acknowledgement is there, and according to one of the lead game designers of Candela Obscura, Spencer Stark, the full rules of Candela Obscura that will be releasing later this year will be citing both Blades in the Dark and Vaesen in full, and talking about how Candela Obscura was inspired by those games and encouraging people to check them out. And John Harper, the creator of Blades in the Dark, has himself expressed approval of Candela Obscura. You can see him here, literally posting a little blue heart in response to Spencer Stark saying that they were inspired by Blades in the Dark. John Harper knows about Candela Obscura and he is fine with this, so it's kind of weird that so many people are getting so offended on his behalf. If he's okay with it, we should be okay with it. I think maybe people aren't used to this attitude from a creator and aren't aware of the history of Blades in the Dark, but when John Harper originally published it, he did so with a highly permissive license to modify its engine, a license that is open to all. Critical Role are engaging with Blades in the Dark as John Harper intended it to be engaged with. He wanted people to take his system and modify it and use it for their own devices. Not every creator is like Games Workshop, who will send you a cease and desist notice for using the word Space Marine in a children's book. Some people are happy to share and don't have the Pinkertons on speed dial. And there's plenty of borrowing that occurs in the indie space. It's a very collaborative atmosphere. Designers are constantly lifting from one another. And for good reason. Good game mechanics, good ideas, and good games deserve to be replicated. RPGs are an iterative genre. As a designer, why would you build a totally new engine, a new system for your game and setting, where there might be something out there that already perfectly captures what you're trying to achieve? There's no point in making yourself more work. This isn't unusual. We are all standing on the backs of giants here. I mean, I could accuse Blades in the Dark of being stolen in the first place too, all because it's a game about rolling dice. Oh, I don't think so. You're gonna owe a lot of money to Mr. Hell, we've all sort of skipped by the elephant in the room. That is the fact that Blades in the Dark is itself inspired by a different RPG engine called Powered by the Apocalypse. It's turtles all the way down, people. RPGs aren't unique here, by the way. This happens in all of game design. It's all iterative.
Your Honor, you take away our right to steal ideas? Where are they gonna come from?
First-person shooter video games used to be called Doom clones, and some people still refer to mugs as handled bowls. Or is that just me? I know it's passé, and people don't like me saying it, but RPGs are art. They're not just commodities, they are transcendent, and all art is derived from inspiration, and nothing is created in a vacuum. Creativity emerges in a context. It's a big soup with everybody writhing around together. And that does not make something derivative just because a bubble appears in the soup. Candela Obscura adds something new to our palette, and I'm happy for that. This is a fundamentally good thing for our hobby as a whole, and I'm just pleased that many new people will get exposed to a totally new, different style of play. And I thank Papa Smurf that we didn't get just another insipid and bland D20 game. Thank you, Papa Smurf! He's my Jesus figure now. And if you enjoyed this sterling defense of Critical Role and you want to hear some more interesting content talking about RPGs and all the stuff that surrounds them, then check out my Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminiatures at the link below to help keep me making this type of content. And if you're interested in hearing more about Blades in the Dark and why it's in my top 5 RPG games for people who don't want to play Dungeons & Dragons no more, check out this video, or see this one if you want to hear my scathing fear of how Call of Cthulhu could be killed by Critical Role. And as always, a huge thanks to my patrons, especially Sonic Bread, CryptoKev, Novani, and Mistress RB. Thank you so much, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye! I saw Papa Smurf when I was 7. I don't want to talk about it.